In 1955, every 10-year-old boy in Cedar Falls could name the exact moment his grandfather's garage went quiet, the second the door rolled down and the heat of the day got locked inside. Today, almost none of them could find that garage. 6:52 on a Tuesday morning, August of 1958. Walt Hadley is 62 years old, and he is crouched on the concrete floor of his one-car garage off Main Street, both knees cracked, a worn Arkansas pocket stone in his right hand, his son's old-timer pocket knife braced against his left thumbnail. Slow, even strokes. No rush. The stone whispers against the blade, and somewhere behind him, a single Maxwell House coffee can is sitting on the workbench with the rust creeping under its lid. Nobody has opened it in a long time. Walt runs the stone along the edge again, the same stroke his father showed him in 1908, the same stroke his grandson will be shown next summer. What is at stake is not the knife. It is the 7-year-old boy who will inherit a workbench he cannot read, a language no one taught him to speak, and a name he will be expected to carry without knowing what it weighs. 31 things hung on those nails, 31 objects that taught a boy how to be a man before the world decided men did not need teaching. We are going to walk through every one of them in order from the smallest to the one that mattered most. And the last one will change the way you see every garage you ever walked past. Hit subscribe before we cross item number 7, because the final entry on this list is worth more than the other 30 combined. Number 31. A worn cedar pencil, 2 inches long, sharpened by a jackknife, still riding the breast pocket of a button-down work shirt, hardware counter at the Cedar Falls Co-op, summer of 1958. 2 cents from a mason jar till. The pencil was not decorative. It marked a cut line on a 2x4 before the saw touched the wood. It noted the depth of a notch on a bandsaw fence. It scratched a phone number on the door jamb when the book by the wall ran out of pages. A man walked into his garage, took the stub between his thumb and first finger, and the work could begin. Today he unlocks his phone, opens a measuring app, asks it to remember the room, and forgets the room by Thursday. The pencil vanished because the man decided his memory was a software problem. It was never a software problem. It was a habit problem, and the habit died in his pocket. Modern man owns 3 digital measuring apps and cannot mark a 2x4 without recharging one of them. Next, the tin that survived 3 plastic replacements. Number 30. A Prince Albert tobacco tin, red and gold, lid rusted at the corners, sitting on the painted windowsill above the bench. Walgreens 5 and Dime on West 1st Street, Cedar Falls, 1955. 12 cents a tin. The tobacco had been gone for 9 years. The tin had not. It held 16 penny nails, 3 brass wood screws, a folded square of emery cloth, and 4 lead split-shot sinkers from the trout lake. The lid closed with a click, and the whole thing weighed less than a pound. A man reached up, slid the lid back with his thumb, found what he needed without looking, slid the lid home. 12 seconds. A modern man owns a magnetic parts tray with a rubber gasket, a stack of labeled acrylic drawers from the big box store, a $300 modular organizer from the German brand, and he still cannot find a washer when the faucet drips at 11 p.m. 3 plastic organizer systems have lived in that garage and died there. The tin is older than all of them. A piece of tinned steel from a Missouri tobacco plant has outlasted every system designed to replace it. Stay with me for the wooden crate. Number 29. A returnable wooden dairy crate. 8 glass bottles. Slats stained dark from 100 trips to the back porch. Cedar Falls Dairy Delivery, every Tuesday and Friday morning, 1957 through 1961. $2.10 a week, billed to the ledger on the kitchen wall. The milkman set the crate on the back step before sunrise. The empties went out, the fresh came in. The boy of the house carried the crate to the porch because carrying the crate was the job, and the job had a sound. Glass clinking, slat creak, the cold weight of milk in January. The crate was washed with a brush and a hose once a month and stored behind the garbage can until the next pickup. No crate meant no milk. No milk meant the boy got sent. The boy got sent. Today the milk arrives through an app in a plastic jug left on the porch by a man who never meets the boy. The crate is gone from every garage in America. So is the boy who carried it. The plastic jug can be recycled. The boy who carried the crate cannot be replaced. Number 28. A spool of 16-gauge galvanized baling wire, salvaged from the barn at the edge of the property the year the Hadleys bought the place. Iowa Farm Auction, summer of 1949. Free for the taking because nobody else wanted it. The wire held the barn door shut through the winter of 1952, when the hinge pin sheared off and the replacement would not arrive from Sears for 6 weeks. It lashed the broken handle of the corn crib gate. It tied the tomato cage to the downspout after the July storm of 1955. It bound the cracked muffler of the Ford pickup until payday. A man pulled 3 feet off the spool, cut it on the edge of the bench with his pliers, twisted it twice, and the job was finished. Today, the modern man owns a drawer full of zip ties in 7 colors, a 12-pack of duct tape, a refill bin of adhesive strips, and the gate still drags on the ground because none of those fixes last past the first rain. Baling wire held a barn door since President Truman took office. Modern fixes break before the next federal holiday. Number 27. A 50-pound paper bag of rock salt leaning in the back corner of the garage, the top folded twice and held with a wooden clothespin. Cedar Falls Hardware Store, November of 1956. 63 cents a bag. The salt went on the front walk when the ice came. It also went on the garden slug line in May, sprinkled in a thin, dry ribbon at the edge of the lettuce bed, gone by morning. A man learned which dose killed ice and which dose killed slugs, and he learned it the only way it could be learned, which was by walking out at 6 a.m. and looking. Modern man pours calcium chloride pellets from a blue plastic jug and watches them burn the dog's paws. He buys a second jug of chlorine-based ice melt for the driveway and a third product, advertised on a podcast, for the steps. 3 chemicals, 3 plastic containers, 3 receipts. The paper bag rotted into the dirt of the garden in 2 seasons and never hurt a single paw. The paper bag is biodegradable archaeology. The plastic jug will be in a landfill when his grandson files his taxes. Now, 2 cans that became a second toolbox. Number 26. 2 motor oil cans, Brunswick and Shell, labels bleached to ghosts by the south-facing window, used as tool caddies on the top shelf of the bench. Filling station at the junction of Highway 218 and the Old River Road, summer of 1958. 35 cents a can, filled at the pump. The cans were emptied, washed with kerosene, and punched with a nail at the rim so a length of baling wire could serve as a handle. One held the chisels, 3 of them, wooden handles cracked, never replaced. The other held the punches, the nail set, and the small gouge. A man reached up, lifted a can by its wire, set it on the bench, and the chisel he wanted was the third from the left. Modern man owns a sealed plastic jug, recycled twice, filled with a sorted set he bought online, and he cannot tell the cold chisel from the brick bolster without opening a phone flashlight. The tin can was Grandpa's second toolbox, and it cost 35 cents and a Saturday afternoon. The second toolbox of the modern man costs $89 and a Saturday of reading reviews. The label is gone. The chisels are still sharp. Number 25.
The Sears Catalog, Fall and Winter Edition, 1955, dog-eared to the page with the .22 rifles, propped on the shelf above the workbench. Chicago, mailed second week of September. Free for the asking.
A boy took the catalog into the outhouse in October because the outhouse was where a boy went to be alone with a decision. He turned to page 412. He read the description of the bolt action. He read it again. He circled the price in pencil, $29.88, and carried the catalog to the kitchen table where his grandfather sat after supper. The grandfather looked at the page, looked at the boy, looked at the price, and said nothing for a long minute. Then he said they would wait for the spring edition. The boy waited 4 months. The order went in on the 15th of March. The rifle arrived at the post office on April 11th. The wait was the point. Modern man orders the same rifle at 11 p.m. from a warehouse 2 states over, pays $42 for 2-day shipping, receives it at the door before he has finished brushing his teeth, and has no memory of the wait, because the wait was engineered out of him. Americans used to wait 4 weeks with joy. Modern man cannot wait 4 minutes for a web page. And the catalog is still on the bench, right next to a chipped Maxwell House coffee can he has never once thought to open. Number 24. A 25-foot canvas garden hose, rubber inside, taped twice at the brass coupling, leaking a slow circle onto the concrete every July afternoon. Hardware counter, Cedar Falls, spring of 1956. $4.10. The leak was measured in drops per minute, not in dollars per warranty claim. A man cut a half-inch of rubber from a scrap inner tube, slipped it over the coupling, snugged it with a hose clamp, and the drip stopped for 2 more summers. When the second leak appeared at the far end, he patched that one too. The hose lasted 11 years and was buried in the back lot when it finally split for good. Modern man owns a reinforced polymer hose with quick connect brass fittings, lifetime warranty, and he replaces it every 26 months because the first time it drips, he throws it in the recycling bin and drives to the store. He has replaced 4 hoses. The grandfather patched 1 hose, and his grandson watered the tomatoes with it through the year the Berlin Wall went up. The leak was not the problem. The throwaway habit was the problem. Next, the wrench that fixed it twice. The wrench that fixed it twice. Number 23. A Sears Best Brand Crescent Wrench, adjustable jaw, catalog number 9-3471, wrapped in green and gold Santa paper on Christmas morning of 1951, mailed from the Sears Roebuck warehouse on Homan Avenue in Chicago. $2.79, paid in cash at the post office on January 9th of 1952, when the money had finally come in from the November hog sale. The wrench lived at the back of the bottom drawer, beside the claw hammer and the wooden mallet. A boy could set the jaw with 1 hand by ratcheting the knurled wheel until the flats bit clean on a hex nut. The first fix was the kitchen sink trap, June of 1952. The joint cracked from a frozen February and weeping into a coffee can beneath the basin. The second fix was the lawnmower carburetor bolt, August of 1956, rounded off by a previous owner who had used the wrong tool and prayed. The same wrench, same hand. 23 years between the first grip and the last. Modern man owns a 40-piece socket set on a chrome rail, a cordless impact driver rated to 240 foot-pounds, a torque wrench certified to ASAE standards, and a $6 hex key set he bought because the YouTube tutorial told him torque matters. The toilet still runs. The carburetor still weeps. The crescent wrench would have been finished in 4 minutes. The impact driver has been on the charger for 6 weeks, and the battery is dead. Grandpa fixed it twice. The modern man has watched 14 tutorials and called a man once. Next, the wire that knew 12 uses. Number 22. A single coat hanger from the Cedar Falls Cleaners on East 7th Street, straightened on the bench vise between the rows of teeth, cut into 3 equal lengths with a cold chisel and 3 hard taps. Summer of 1958. The first length probed the clogged jet of the pushmower carburetor, tapped loose with a pin punch. The second length fished the wedding ring out of the bathroom drain on Easter Sunday of 1960, fished up by Mrs. Bertha Lundeen on her hands and knees, ring returned before the ham went in. The third length scraped the lint from the refrigerator condenser coils every Labor Day for as long as the Frigidaire lasted. The hanger was free. The vise was already bolted to the bench. Modern man owns a 10-piece pick and hook set in a molded case, a $3 drain snake from the dollar store, a can of compressed air with a red straw, a flexible claw grabber, and a pair of tweezers he bought for his eyebrows in 2014. He has not cleaned his condenser coils since he owned the refrigerator. The wedding ring would have stayed in the trap. Mrs. Lundeen would have told the story at the funeral. A man had 1 piece of wire and knew 12 uses for it. The modern man has 40 tools and uses none of them. Next, the can that held 47 parts and never spilled. Number 21. 3 glass coffee cans, Maxwell House, Folgers, Chase and Sanborn, lids removed, washed with hot water and a splash of vinegar, set side by side on the second shelf above the bench. Cedar Falls Grocery, various dates between 1955 and 1959. Returned free with the proof of purchase. The first can held nails, 6-penny commons, 8-penny commons, 16-penny sinkers, and the long roofing nails that only the barn roof ever asked for. The second can held bolts, 1/4 inch, 3/8 inch, hex heads and carriage heads, each one wrapped once in a twist of newspaper so the threads would not gall. The third can held washers, lock rings, the small brass escutcheon pins from the medicine cabinet, and a folded card with the part number for the Moen faucet repair kit written in pencil in a hand that no longer drew a paycheck. A boy learned the cans the way he learned the silverware drawer, by sound, by weight, by the small muscle memory of reaching for the second shelf without looking. Modern man owns a 48-drawer plastic organizer cabinet, magnetic parts trays in 3 sizes, a wall-mounted pegboard with 112 labeled hooks, and a phone app that catalogs inventory by photograph. He has owned 4 organizer systems in 8 years and currently cannot find a single 1/4 inch washer because the cabinet was reorganized in March and the labels were never reapplied. The glass can held 47 parts. It never spilled. It was older than the man who reorganized the cabinet, and it would have outlasted him, too. Number 20. A Diston D8 crosscut handsaw with the applewood handle, made in Philadelphia, hung on 2 penny nails driven into the wall stud above the bench. Hardware store, Cedar Falls, the fall of 1948. $3.40. The saw had 8 teeth to the inch, filed once a year on the solstice with a taper file and a saw set. A cut started with the thumb knuckle as the guide, the blade drawn back 3 times to open the kerf, then the long, even stroke that asked only for straight geometry and a quiet wrist. The saw cut a true line through Douglas fir 2x10s on a Saturday in March of 1961, when the Hadley boys rebuilt the back porch together. The same saw hung on the same nails through 1970. The same wall still holds the nail holes, even if the saw went to the grandson in a cardboard box. Modern man owns a 7 1/4 inch circular saw, a 10-inch sliding compound miter saw, an oscillating multi-tool with 15 blades, and a reciprocating saw he bought for the bathroom demo and never plugged in again. The 7 1/4 needs a fresh blade every 3 jobs. The miter saw has not been calibrated since the move. The handsaw cut true for 23 years and asked nothing of the grit. Next, the drill that gave muscle back. Number 19. A Yankee number 30 push drill, hand-cranked, all gears and cast iron, made in Vermont, owned since before Pearl Harbor. Factory production, pre-1946. Gifted to the oldest grandson on his 11th birthday in 1955. The drill took a 1/4 inch bit by means of a Jacobs chuck tightened with a supplied key.
The handle pushed down, the gears spun, the bit bit. A boy drilled pilot holes for the wood screws in the new workbench top on a Tuesday afternoon in July. 22 holes, even spacing, drilled plumb because the boy held the frame square against the wood and pressed straight down with the heel of his palm. The first 3 holes were crooked, the 4th through the 22nd were straight. The boy learned what plumb meant by failing it 3 times. Modern Man owns a 20-bolt lithium-ion cordless drill, a drill press on a rolling stand, a self-leveling laser plumb bob, and a magnetic wristband so he does not lose the bits. The cordless drill lives on the counter with a dead battery because nobody put it back on the charger. The drill press was a good idea in 2019.
The boy learned plumb from the crooked holes. The modern man learned plumb from a YouTube tutorial and still cannot hold a straight line. The Yankee took muscle and gave muscle back. Next, the box that came with a 6-minute conversation. Number 18. A half-empty Dutch Masters cigar box, cedar-lined, lid marked in blue pencil with the drugstore price, sitting at the right corner of the workbench under the south-facing window. Cedar Falls Rexall Drugstore counter, 1955. 8 cigars for 43 cents. The lid lifted clean because cedar does not warp. Inside were 4 cigars, a folded strip of cigarette papers, 3 book matches from the gas station, and a single wooden kitchen match struck on the bench to light the lot. A neighbor stopped by at 6:15 on a July evening, leaned against the door jamb, took a cigar from the box, lit it with the kitchen match, and talked about the price of oats for 6 minutes. The talk ended when the cigar ended. The neighbor went home. The grandfather flicked the ash into the Maxwell House can on the bench. Modern Man owns a vape pen with a refillable pod, a tin of nicotine pouches in wintergreen, a closed-system disposable for the golf course, and a Bluetooth speaker playing a true crime podcast. He inhales once in the garage. The pod is empty in 40 minutes. The neighbor does not stop by because the neighbor is on Reddit. Grandpa's nicotine came with a 6-minute conversation. The modern man's nicotine comes with a cloud and a podcast host he will never meet. Stay with me. The plates that hung as proof of time. Number 17. A cardboard box of Iowa license plates, stacked by year from 1952 through 1964, leaning against the corner stud beside the wooden crate that no longer came. Cedar Falls, IDMV, various dates. Issued free with a registration, mailed once a year to the kitchen address. A boy pulled the 1953 plate from the stack on a Saturday in October of 1963. The plate hung on the pegboard wall behind the bench with 3 drywall nails, top and bottom, hung at eye level so the grandfather could read the year while he worked. The 1955 plate hung beside it. The 1958 plate hung beside that. The wall became a calendar you could read from the workbench stool. A man knew what year it was because the wall told him. Modern Man owns a digital registration card on his phone, a license plate lookup app that tells him whose pickup truck is parked across the street, a DMV kiosk receipt stapled to the inside of the glove box, and an insurance app that texts him a photo of his own plates every 6 months. He cannot remember the year of his own truck without opening the phone. The grandfather remembered the year of his truck because the wall was lined with the previous ones. The plates hung as quiet proof of time. The phone hangs as quiet proof of forgetting. Next, the hooks a neighbor charged in eggs. Number 16. 3 hand-forged steel hooks hammered out on an anvil behind the blacksmith shop on West 2nd Street. Hung on the garage wall above the rake handles. Cedar Falls, summer of 1953. Paid for with 2 dozen brown eggs and a quart of cream. The hooks were squared at the shank, tapered at the point, drilled with a 1/2-inch hole at the butt so a lag bolt could seat them into the 2x6 plate.
The blacksmith, Otis Brammer, had fired the forge at 6 in the morning and finished the 3 hooks by 9. He drank a cup of coffee from the enamelware mug nailed to his own bench before he walked back. The grandfather drove the lag bolts in by hand, set the hooks level with a torpedo level borrowed from the carpenter down the street, and hung the steel garden rake on the first, the round point shovel on the second, and the draw hoe on the third.
The arrangement held for 31 years. The hooks outlasted every rake handle they carried. Modern man owns a plastic yard tool rack with resin hooks molded to fit specific handle diameters, a fiberglass-handled bow rake with a lifetime warranty, and a gas-powered leaf blower he uses to clear the driveway in 12 seconds. The plastic rack cracked in the second winter. The resin hook snapped under the weight of a wet shovel in March of 2022. The hand-forged hooks were hammered by a neighbor who charged in eggs because the money was not the point, and the point was the coffee and the morning. Otis Brammer never sent an invoice. The plastic rack has a customer service number that puts a man on hold for 40 minutes. Stay with me for the bag that mixed paste thick as a mother's gravy. Number 15. A 5-pound paper sack of gold medal flour, folded at the top and clipped with a wooden clothespin, sitting on the high shelf above the paint cans. Cedar Falls Piggly Wiggly, October of 1956. 49 cents a bag, bought on a Saturday grocery run because the wallpaper needed paste and the wallpaper paste was out of stock. The grandfather boiled water in the enamelware kettle on the kitchen stove. He measured the flour by the cup, 3 cups to a half-gallon of water, whisked cold first, then poured into the boiling water and stirred with the wooden spoon until the paste pulled clean from the bottom of the pot. He let it cool in the granite-ware dishpan until it was the thickness of a mother's gravy. He rolled the paste onto the back of the wallpaper strip with a short-nap paint roller, booked the strip, and let it sit for 8 minutes before he hung it. The wall papered clean because the paste was thick and the paste held. Modern man owns a 5-gallon bucket of pre-mixed wheat-based wallpaper paste from the home center, a $2 packet of methyl cellulose powder he mixes in the kitchen sink, and a $6 sample of peel-and-stick vinyl wallpaper he bought because the rental agreement forbids real paste. The pre-mixed paste separated in the bucket after 18 months in the unheated garage. The methyl cellulose powder is still in the bag because the project got postponed. The peel-and-stick vinyl curled at the seam in the first humid week of July and has not laid flat since. Grandpa mixed his paste thick as a mother's gravy. The modern man has not papered a wall since the iPhone learned to recognize his face. Now, the can, the rusty nails, and the next page. Number 14. The Maxwell House coffee can, lid rusted at the rim, sitting on the corner of the workbench under the south window. Salvage bin behind the Cedar Falls filling station, winter of 1949. Free for the asking, taken home because the can was sound. The can held the nails that the cans beside it could not hold. Common nails bent on the third hammer blow and straightened on the anvil by hand. Roofing nails pulled from the barn shingles and saved. Cut nails fished out of the old floorboards during the 1953 porch rebuild. Masonry nails too short for any current job and too valuable to throw away. A boy reached into the can with his bare hand on a Saturday in May of 1961, felt the bite of the rust on his thumb, and pulled out a 6-penny common that drove clean into the new fascia board on the first swing. The nail was older than the boy. The nail was older than the fascia board. The nail was held until the next bent nail came in, and then the can was full again. Modern man owns a 5-pound contractor bag of uniform 10-penny vinyl-coated sinkers from the big box store, a hammer belt clip loaded with 20 sorted collated nails for the nail gun he does not own, and a magnet on a stick for picking up the nails that missed the target. The contractor bag was thrown in the back of the truck and rained on for 6 weeks before it was opened.
Half the nails are rusted into a single block. The other half are bent. The can was older than every man in the garage, and the rusty nail held twice, once on the first swing, once on the straightening anvil that waited for it. The rusty nail held twice. The contractor bag holds once and rusts shut. Next, the brick that was the oldest object in the garage and what was hidden inside the Maxwell House can the whole time. The brick that was the oldest object in the garage. Number 13. A solid red clay brick, hand-cut, scrap from the chimney stack that came down in the November windstorm of 1947. Cedar Falls Brickyard, late fall of that year. Set on the garage floor against the inside of the swinging door because the door swung hard and needed a stop heavier than iron. The brick was not pretty. It was a 5 by 3 1/8 by 2 1/4 standard common, red fired to a dark heat, edges chipped from the mason's hammer when the chimney was torn down. A man set it in place on a Sunday morning in March of 1948 and never moved it again. The door came to rest against it 45,000 times. The brick wore a black crescent into its own face from the door panel. The door wore a matching black crescent into the brick. Modern man owns a rubber wedge doorstop in the color of his choosing, an automatic door closer with adjustable tension rated for a 180-pound door, and a hydraulic hinge he installed in 2017 after watching a video on smooth closings. The rubber wedge slides across the polished concrete floor every time the door is opened. The automatic closer was recalibrated in 2019 and has not functioned since. The brick did not need calibration because the brick did not know it was a brick. It was the oldest object in the garage. It predated the workbench, the pegboard, the can of nails, and the boy who would one day rest his boot against it while he tied his laces before he walked out to the Chevrolet in the drive. The brick has been a doorstop for longer than the modern man has owned his home. Next, what was hidden inside the Maxwell House can the whole time? Number 12. A single chainsaw file, carbide tipped, 10 inches long, wrapped in a square of 1947 Cedar Falls Courier newspaper, the receipt from the Sears Roebuck order tucked beneath it in the same paper. Filed under catalog number 9-4081, mailed from the Homan Avenue warehouse, April of 1947. 63 cents. The Maxwell House can had been sitting on the workbench through every single item on this list. The lid was rusted shut from the inside because the rust had been given 12 years to work without ever being opened. The grandfather had not meant to lock it. He had meant to come back for the file the next morning after the barn roof job. The next morning had 11 chainsaw projects behind it. The can stayed on the bench. The file stayed in the can. The receipt stayed under the file. The year on the receipt was 1947. The grandson who will one day unwrap the file is 6 years old in 1958 and does not yet know the can is closed. He will be shown the can on a Tuesday afternoon of his 11th summer. The lid will be tapped loose with the flat of a chisel. The newspaper will tear along the old fold. The file will come out bright. The receipt will come out brittle. The grandson will learn that his grandfather kept one tool wrapped in a newspaper for 11 years, so the rust would never find it. The grandfather kept that tool wrapped because the grandfather understood that a tool which was not needed was still a tool which must be kept ready. Modern man owns an electric chainsaw sharpener with a depth guide stop, 3 replacement chains shipped overnight in plastic clamshells, and a $30 diamond hone hand sharpener he bought on the recommendation of a man on a forum he no longer trusts. The electric sharpener has a stone that wears in 14 sharpenings. The replacement chain comes in a clamshell that breaks before the chain is used. The file, wrapped in a 1947 paper, came out bright. The can was not for coffee. Next, the pants that were thrown away thinner than cardboard and still lasted. Number 11. A pair of Levi's 501, raw denim, copper riveted at the stress points, manufactured at the Valencia Street plant in San Francisco, purchased at the Cedar Falls department store in the spring of 1955. $2.48, paid in cash out of a brown envelope. The pants were worn until the rivet at the crotch blew through the denim on a Saturday in July of 1962. The grandfather sat on the workbench stool with a curved needle and waxed white thread from the sewing kit in the kitchen drawer and sewed a patch over the blowout. Patch edges turned under, stitches run at 12 to the inch. The pants were worn for 6 more months until the knee went.
The grandfather patched the knee. The pants were worn for another 4 months until the right hip pocket tore out from carrying the tobacco tin. The grandfather wore a darker patch on the right hip from then on. The pants were thrown away in the spring of 1963, thinner at the seat than a postcard, and they had lasted 8 years. Modern man owns a pair of moisture-wicking rip-stop work pants with reinforced seams and articulated knees, price $94, sold as workwear by a brand that was founded in 2009. The pair from 2017 has a blown gusset at the crotch after 14 months and is not under warranty because the warranty excludes crotch blowouts. The grandfather's pants lasted 8 years. The modern man's pants lasted 14 months. Both pairs failed at the crotch. The grandfather sewed the failure. The modern man filed a complaint. The crotch will always go first. The grandfather knew that.
Next, the towel that was never for the body. Number 10. A single faded bath towel, terry cotton, sun-bleached on the line so many summers the weave had gone the color of old snow. Hung on a single 6-penny nail driven into the wall stud beside the vise. Cedar Falls department store, summer of 1954. 79 cents, bought in a 2-pack but separated on first use. The towel did not dry a body. The towel dried the vice grips after the morning dew sat on them. The towel wiped the chainsaw bar oil from the hands before the work was set down on the bench. The towel wrapped the small parts in a row when the carburetor was taken apart on the back porch in July. The towel was washed on a Monday, hung on the line on a Tuesday, taken in on a Wednesday, hung on the nail on a Thursday, and used on a Friday.
Modern man owns a case of 480 blue paper shop towels on a roller, a 20-pack of microfiber rags in a zip bag, and a $5 chamois he bought because a man on the internet said it was the only thing that would not leave lint on his show car. The blue paper towels are thrown away after 1 wipe. The microfiber rags are washed with the kitchen towels and come out covered in lint. The chamois has been used twice. The bath towel was used on the vice grips every Friday morning for 22 years and was never once laundered with the kitchen towels because it was not a kitchen towel. The towel was for the vice grips. The man who hung it knew that the day he drove the nail, next, the iron that sweated copper with a steady hand. Number 9. A vintage electric soldering iron, 60-watt, Bakelite handle blackened from 1,000 grips, paired with a roll of lead-free solder on a wooden dowel. Cedar Falls Hardware, sometime before the Korean War ended. $6 for the pair. The iron sold separately in a brown cardboard sleeve. The iron took 11 minutes to come up to temperature on the kitchen outlet. The grandfather always kept it plugged in on a back table of the garage, corded, cloth-covered, no on-off switch, heat determined by the timer on the mantel clock. A boy watched in May of 1959 while the grandfather sweated a joint on the cold water line under the kitchen sink, fitting wiped clean with emery cloth, flux brushed on with a toothbrush trimmed to a 1/2 inch, joint heated until the solder flowed at the touch of the dowel. The joint held for 19 years. Modern man owns a butane-powered cordless soldering iron with a 15-second heat-up, a lead-free solder kit in a plastic clamshell, and a $30 temperature-controlled station he bought because a forum told him the right temperature for copper was 470 degrees. The butane iron runs out of fuel on the second joint. The lead-free solder kit includes a roll of plumbing solder that is not lead-free, and a warning label that contradicts itself. The temperature station was not unpacked in the move. Grandpa sweated copper pipe with a 60-watt iron and a steady hand. The modern man has not sweated a pipe since the cordless iron ran out of fuel in 2021. Next, the cup that never broke a man's teeth or his pride. Number 8. A speckled blue and white enamelware mug, the handle nailed through with a small brad so the handle could not pull loose when the cup was lifted by it. Cedar Falls Hardware, the spring of 1953. 41 cents, hung on a 6-penny nail beside the pegboard. The cup was for coffee at 6 in the morning. The cup was also for bolts when the cup was not for coffee. A man drank his first cup from the cup, set it on the bench while he worked, refilled it twice before noon, and washed it once before bed. The cup was chipped at the rim from the afternoon a wrench slipped from the top shelf. The chip did not matter. The chip was the history of the cup. Modern man owns a $35 Yeti tumbler with a magnetic slider lid, a $40 stainless steel insulated growler from the craft brewery, and a branded thermos from the trade show he attended in 2018. The Yeti tumbler is in the truck. The growler is in the recycling. The branded thermos is in the closet because the trade show was in 2018 and the logo is no longer relevant. The enamelware mug is still on the nail. The enamelware mug has been through 11 summers and 4 truck beds and 1 house fire. The house fire being the 1988 garage fire that took the workbench but spared the nail, and the cup was retrieved from the ash on a Sunday morning when the grandfather came back with a shovel and a box. The cup never broke a man's teeth. The cup never broke a man's pride. The cup is older than the modern man's marriage. The enamelware does not dent. The man does, and the enamelware does not. Next, the reel that taught every grandson how to fish. Number 7. A Zebco 33 closed-faced spin-cast reel, factory boxed from the Tulsa, Oklahoma plant on East Archer Street, given to a grandson on his 7th birthday in 1954, because every grandson born after that year in that region of the country was given one. $12.43 for the combo, shipped to the Cedar Falls 5 and dime. The reel had a push-button release, a fixed spool, and a level wind that laid the line on the spool without the operator having to think about it. A boy took the rod and reel to the mill pond in June of 1955, tied a worm on a number 8 eagle claw hook, cast the worm 10 feet from the muddy bank, and waited. The first bluegill took the worm at 6:40 in the evening. The boy set the hook with a pull that bent the rod tip to the cork. The reel clicked, the line came back. The bluegill was 6 inches long and was kept in a coffee can of water on the bank until the boy carried it home for the pan. That boy was the same grandson who, 11 summers later, would learn to sharpen the old-timer on the Arkansas stone in the opening minutes of this list. The Zebco taught him to fish because the Zebco could not fail. The button could not backlash, the level wind could not overrun, the closed face could not tangle on a backcast. Modern man owns a $400 Shimano Stratic spinning reel with 6 ball bearings and a sealed drag, a $300 baitcast reel with a magnetic braking system, and a graphite rod blank that cost as much as the grandfather's workbench lumber. The Stratic has not been cleaned since the striper trip of 2019. The baitcast reel backlashes on every 3rd cast and was returned to the manufacturer once. The graphite rod broke at the ferrule in the back of the truck on the way home from the lake last August. The grandfather taught the grandson to fish on a $12 reel, and the grandson caught every bluegill in the lake. The modern man has 4 reels and has not caught a fish in 3 summers. The reel cost $12. The bluegill cost nothing. The lesson cost the boy nothing because the boy was not charged for lessons. Next, The knife, the stone, the inheritance. Number 6. The old-timer 34 OT pocket knife, 3 5/8 inches closed, mirror-polished carbon steel blade, manufactured at the Schrade Cutlery Factory on Liberty Street in Ellenville, New York. Paired with a soft hard Arkansas pocket stone, 3 inches long, leather pouch stitched by a saddle maker in Dubuque. Both items mailed from the catalog department in the spring of 1947. $1.63 for the knife, 94 cents for the stone. Walt Hadley inherited the knife from his own father in the autumn of 1946. The original handle scales were jigged bone, one cracked from a fall off the barn loft in 1931. The grandfather had replaced the broken scale with 2 layers of leather cut from his father's own belt. Belt leather is thick, it does not swell, it takes a thumbprint when gripped. The knife was the only object in the garage that had been in the hand of 3 generations of Hadley men, and it was the only object in the garage that had been sharpened on that same Arkansas stone by all 3. Walt Hadley crouched on the concrete at 6:52 on a Tuesday morning of August 1958, knife braced against the left thumbnail, stone drawn along the edge in slow, even strokes, and he showed the grandson how the stone was held, how the angle was kept, how the burr was stropped off on the back of the leather pouch. The grandson watched. The grandson took the knife. The grandson took the stone. The grandson drew the stone along the blade 4 times, slow, even, no rush. The grandfather said nothing. The grandson handed the knife back. The knife had been sharpened. The grandson had not been told he had been sharpened along with it. Every other object in this list was touched by the grandson's hand before it was hung on its nail. The garage was not storage. The garage was a school. The knife was the chalk. The chalk was sharpened on the stone, and the stone was sharpened on the grandfather, and the grandfather was sharpened on his own father. A modern man owns a $400 tactical folder with a ceramic blade that never needs sharpening, a replaceable pocket clip in 3 colors, and a titanium frame lock rated for hard use. The ceramic blade cannot be sharpened on an Arkansas stone because the ceramic blade cannot be sharpened at all. The modern man carries the folder in his pocket for 3 years, and it has never been opened in the presence of another man, and it has never been opened by another man's hand, and it has never been sharpened on another man's stone. The knife has no stories because the man has no masters. The man has no masters because the masters were not passed down. The masters were not passed down because the garages were not preserved. The garages were not preserved because the garages were not understood. The garages were not understood because the pencils were thrown away. No real man owns a $400 knife and has never had his thumb nicked. A ledger stapled to the wall. That is where the math of a real man lived. Number 5. A manila envelope of Sears catalog order invoices, dated from 1949 through 1964, paper-clipped in chronological order, each one tape-stapled to the stud above the workbench where the pegboard now hangs. Sears Roebuck, Homan Avenue Warehouse, Chicago. Every order paid in cash at the post office on the day it arrived, the receipt mailed back to the buyer in the same brown envelope, the buyer filing the receipt in the manila envelope against the next purchase. The grandfather could tell you the price of every tool on the wall without standing up. The 49-cent order of the October 1951 was the crosscut saw blade. The $1.62 order of the March 1953 was the box of number 6 wood screws. The $4.12 order of the September 1956 was the canvas garden hose in the same year the hose leaked at the coupling we passed over in item number 24. A boy learned that money left the kitchen drawer, money came back as a tool on the wall, and the receipt was the proof that the 2 events were connected. The ledger taught a boy the weight of $1 because the boy saw the dollar leave and the tool arrive and the receipt taped in between. Modern man owns a digital order history in his email, a monthly credit card statement he does not open, a rewards app balance worth $6.80,
and a phone folder labeled Receipts that holds 412 screenshots of purchases he cannot match to a tool. The grandfather knew the price of every tool. The modern man knows the closing balance on his card and the date the payment is due, and not much else. A man with no ledger is a man who has traded proof for convenience.
Convenience expires. Proof does not. Next, the jar of marbles earned by a knuckle scraped on hot asphalt. Number 4, a glass ball jar, half-gallon, lid sealed with a ring of melted beeswax, sitting on the bottom shelf of the pegboard beside the can of nails. Crown high-bounce marbles, Aggies, cat's eyes, and one single Steely ground down to a perfect sphere on the sidewalk in front of the schoolhouse. Cedar Falls 5 and dime, the autumns of 1946 through 1951. Marbles earned one at a time. The lid came off with a thumbnail dug into the beeswax. A boy poured the marbles into his palm on a Saturday morning in October of 1956, picked out the largest Aggies for the game of ringer set up in the dirt ring behind the garage, and won 11 of the 14 matches he played that fall. The Steely was never used in a game. The Steely was the trophy. The Steely sat in the bottom of the jar because the jar was the league. Modern man owns a digital leaderboard on a gaming console, an achievement app that grants him platinum trophies for pressing buttons in a sequence the algorithm approves, and a foam-packed acrylic case shipped from a manufacturer in Shenzhen holding 2 figurines he pre-ordered in 2022 and has not removed from the box because the boxes retain their value sealed. The leaderboard resets every season. The achievement app resets every update. The acrylic case sits in a closet because the man does not display trophies that no one gave him. The marbles were earned by a knuckle scraped on hot asphalt, and the Steely sat at the bottom of the jar because the jar was the only league a real man ever needed. A trophy earned is a trophy kept. A trophy granted is a trophy queued for the landfill. Now, the bench that held 1,400 pounds on lumber scraps and a Saturday, and the false finish. Number 3. A workbench built from 2x4s and old barn board pine, never painted, never sanded, top planks doweled together with oak pegs in drawbar joints, edge grain facing up so the glue would not shear. Built in the Cedar Falls garage on the second Saturday of October, 1951. Walt Hadley was 55 years old that Saturday. He squared the planks against the shop wall the night before, chalk-lined the cut marks on a single cedar plank borrowed from the lumberyard scrap bin, and set his son, the boy's father, 31 years old, to cutting the legs while he cut the stretchers. The two worked from 7 in the morning until the last dowel was driven home at 4:15. The bench was not level. The bench was plumb. The top sat at 34 inches because the grandfather's elbow rested on it without a thought when he sharpened the stone in item number 6. The top held 1,400 pounds on the day the grandson set the rebuilt Briggs & Stratton engine block on it in 1962. The bench cost 38 cents in dowels and 3 Saturdays of the boy's time. Modern man owns a Husky 46-inch workbench shipped flat pack from a warehouse in Pennsylvania, a Craftsman solid wood top on a steel frame priced at $499 on the weekend, and a Cobalt rolling utility bench rated for 150 pounds of distributed load. The Husky particle board top sagged under 110 pounds of tool storage by the second spring. The Craftsman steel frame rusted at the foot, where the concrete sweated in August. The Cobalt rolling bench holds 150 pounds and is rated for it. The bench Walt built held 1,400 pounds and was not rated for anything because the bench did not need to be rated because the bench was not a product. The bench was a Saturday and 2 men's hands and a father teaching a son and a son learning what a Saturday was for. A real man's workbench is not a product. A real man's workbench is a Saturday turned into a permanent thing. Stay with me. The false finish was kind. The finish is coming. Number 2. A wooden toolbox, dovetailed at the corners,
Dovetails cut by hand on a Saturday morning in May of 1954. The lid hinged with a continuous brass piano hinge scavenged from a piano bench discarded by the church on Madison Street. Top of the box burned with the letters W.H., the initials of Walt Hadley. Burned with a wood-burning iron heated on the kitchen stove. Cedar Falls Garage, late spring of 1954. Each tool inside was wrapped in a single layer of wax paper, cut from a grocery bag. The hammer at the bottom layered over 2 flat files over a wooden mallet over the Yankee push drill from item number 19. Each tool nested in its own fold of paper so the tools would not scratch each other when the box was carried to the back lot for the fence repair in August. The handle of the box was a single piece of walnut bent in steam over the kitchen pressure canner and screwed to the sides with brass wood screws. A boy carried the box at his side on a leather strap from the time his arms were long enough to take the weight. 9 years old, summer of 1957. And the box was heavier than the boy by 20 pounds. Modern man owns a Husky 54-inch rolling tool cabinet with 11 drawers and a keyed lock, an $800 Milwaukee stack system with a power tool drawer and a battery charger built into the frame, and a wheeled Pelican case with customizable foam cutouts shaped to his specific tool collection. The Husky drawer slides have failed in the second drawer. The Milwaukee stack takes up a 6-foot section of the garage wall. The Pelican case has been opened twice because the foam cutouts discourage use. The grandfather's toolbox had oil rags and a quiet kind of reverence because the wax paper between the tools was the same wax paper his wife used to line the bread tin, and a man does not separate the work of his hands from the kitchen of his house when the kitchen is half of the work. The letters W.H. were burned into the lid because the lid would outlast the man, and the man wanted the grandson to know who sharpened the stone that he was being shown. A man's tools are not organized in foam. A man's tools are organized in the order his father handed them to him. The toolbox was the second most important thing in the garage. The first thing comes last. Number 1. A hand-stitched leather shop apron, vegetable tanned cowhide, 5 ounces in weight, inked across the chest piece with the initials W.H. in iron gall black. The stitches saddle-stitched by hand with waxed linen thread at 7 stitches to the inch. The thread waxed by running it 4 times through a block of beeswax pressed against the sewing machine motor in the cobbler's shop. Cedar Falls Cobbler on 2nd Street, made to order, paid for in October of 1955, delivered on a Tuesday morning of the following spring. $4.20. The apron hung on a single 6-penny nail driven into the door jamb on the inside of the garage door at a height of 72 inches, hook end up so the apron would slide on without looking. The apron was the first thing the grandfather touched when he walked into the garage, and the last thing he took off when he walked out. The apron took the brunt of the hammer blows that missed the nail and caught the thumb. The apron took the soldering splatter from item number 9. The apron took the pitch from the chainsaw bar that wept once in the July heat of 1956. The apron took the tobacco stain from the cigars in item number 18. The apron took the fish gut smear from the bluegill in item number 7. The apron took the dirty hand of every grandson who walked into the garage before he had learned to wash his hands in the kitchen sink first. The apron took all of it and gave back the shape of a man when the apron hung on the nail at the end of the day, bagged at the bottom where the leather had stretched from being pulled on 2,000 times. Every other item on this list, the pencil, the tin, the hose, the saw, the drill, the plate, the hook, the brick, the file, the pants, the towel, the iron, the cup, the reel, the knife, the receipt, the marble, the bench, the box. Every one of those items was an apprentice to this one item. The apron is the master. The apron is the only piece of equipment in the garage that did not perform a function when the work was done.
The apron performed a function when the work was being learned. The apron stood between the grandsons and the grandfather when the grandsons watched the grandfather sharpen the stone. The apron caught the grandson the day the grandson pulled the wrong drawer and the chisel fell toward the boot. The apron held the swing before the swing arrived because the grandfather's hand was already on the apron's hem. The apron is not a tool. The apron is the teacher of every tool. The garage was organized around the apron because the apron was the only object in the room that knew the order the lessons needed to be given in. Modern man owns a canvas work apron with adjustable straps and a kangaroo pouch for his phone, a nylon waist apron with 12 pockets for his drill bits, and a leather smithing apron from a craft supply website priced at $140 that sits in the box because the box was a gift and the box was not opened because the modern man did not learn the lessons that would have justified the apron, and the apron without the lessons is a costume. The grandfather's apron was a costume only once, on Halloween of 1953, and the costume was still the apron because the grandfather had no other costume to wear, and the apron had taught the child dressed as the child that the real costume was the apron itself, and the real costume had been the only costume worth wearing all year. The pencil led, the tin held, the hose watered, the saw cut, the drill turned, the stone sharpened. The apron received every lesson the man ever learned to give. The apron is the reason the rest of the garage mattered. The garage was not a workshop. The garage was a school. And the apron hung by the door because the lesson began the moment the apron went on, and the lesson ended the moment the apron came off. And the lesson was the only thing the man knew how to give. Close. It is 6:53 in the morning of that same Tuesday in August of 1958. Walt Hadley is still on the concrete floor of his one-car garage on Main Street in Cedar Falls, Iowa. The Arkansas stone is still in his hand. The old-timer is still braced against his left thumbnail. The Maxwell House coffee can is still on the workbench under the south-facing window. The boy is still crouched beside him, 6 years old in 1958, not yet 7, watching the grandfather's hand the way a boy watches a hand he is trying to remember. The lesson has not ended. The lesson will not end in this garage this morning. The lesson will end 10 years from now in a different garage with a different boy, and the lesson will end 20 years after that, and the lesson will keep ending in different garages with different boys as long as the apron hangs on the nail, and the nail is in the stud, and the stud is in the wall, and the wall holds up the roof of a garage where a man once taught a boy to sharpen a stone that sharpened a knife, that opened a can that held a file, that sharpened a saw, that cut a board, that made a bench, that held an engine, that turned a blade, that cut the grass, that fed the cow, that fed the boy. The first item on this list opened with a grandfather on a concrete floor. The last item on this list opens with an apron hanging on a nail. The viewer who has stayed through all 31 items now understands what the stone at the opening was sharpening the boy for. The stone was not sharpening the knife. The stone was sharpening the boy. The knife was the inheritance. The boy was the inheritance. The boy was sharpened so that the boy could one day hand the stone to another boy. Slow, even, no rush, in a different garage, in a different year, on a different Tuesday morning. That is the single anchor skill that lived inside the 30 surrounding items. That is what every tool and every tradition in the garage was built, sharpened, cleaned, or passed down to master. The skill is not sharpening. The skill is teaching a boy to sharpen. The skill is becoming the man who can hand a stone to a boy and say nothing while the boy makes 4 slow strokes and hands the knife back sharpened. The no real man today owns a garage where that handoff ever happens. The no real man today owns a stone that has been used by 3 generations of hands.
The no real man today owns an apron that took the brunt of every lesson his grandfather never knew how to give.
If your father or your grandfather taught you to sharpen one thing, one blade, one edge, one stone, drop it in the comments below. The name of the knife, the name of the man, the year you learned it. That comment is the new nail in the stud. Next week on this channel, we are walking through 31 things every American grandmother kept in the kitchen in 1947 that no real woman cooks with today. Hit the red button before you close the tab. The first 4 minutes are worth more than the other 45 combined, and one of the items in that list belonged to your mother, whether she knows it or not. A real man's garage is not a place to park a truck. A real man's garage is the room where the lessons were given by a man who could not write them down, and a boy who could not yet read them, and a stone that was passed from hand to hand until the hands ran out. Thanks for staying with me. I will see you in the next one.